Guess what time it is?
Why?
It'll be the depth of me.
Hi flower friends, it's Nicole from Flower Hill Farm and I am growing cut flowers for sale in upstate New York. I'm zone 4B and I have about 20 acres here, but we're not farming all of that. And this week I posted a picture, it was a drone shot of the deer fence that we installed, and that's what this is behind me. So I did some math and it's less than 1/4 acre. It seems really big and it is a good size, but I was doing some math and I think it's about probably 1/5 of an acre that's protected from the deer. Now it's not 100% protected. This is only an 8-foot tall fence. Deer are known to jump things up to 10 feet tall, but they're less likely to do that if they have other food sources available, and there are a ton of food sources here in this area. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that they're not trying to get in here. We are planning on adding something at the top. Someone mentioned like a bunting or a fence a little bit farther out from that because they really have a difficult time with depth perception. If they don't think they can land somewhere, they're not likely to jump toward that place. So we'll see. We're gonna probably do some more things just to make sure it's completely deer proof because I don't wanna risk the crop, you know? So we used 4x4s. We bought 10-foot long 4x4s. We put them 2 feet into the ground. We did not use any concrete or anything like that to stabilize it in the earth. I thought we were going to, and I spoke to my father. My father he's an electrician, but he also builds houses. He built the house that I live in. He built the house that he lives in. He built many houses and pole barns and things like that. He suggested that I didn't. He said it wouldn't be a bad thing for it to give and flow with the freezes and the frosts, that it's not something that needs to be stable like a building would because it was a fence. So he told us not to do that we might have issues with the fencing if the 4x4s weren't allowed to shift with the weather. So we did not use that. On the bottom, I used rabbit fencing, and that I believe was 28 inches tall. And then on the top, I used cattle panel. Now that's the welded wire cattle panel that you would make fencing with to keep cattle in, cattle panel. So that's what we used all the way around. I used 50 4x4s and 50 cattle panels. I left a 6-foot wide opening because our tractor is about 6 foot wide when it has the tiller and stuff on, and it's 6 feet wide, so the tractor has access to that. It took us a weekend to really do it. One day was putting the posts in. Our neighbor has a post hole attachment for his tractor, so he brought it over and dug all of the holes, and there was like a 4-man crew. We did this back in March, so it was very early quarantine project, and it really was real quick. It probably took maybe 3 hours to go around and do all the things. There were some questions on my Instagram post. One of them is, if you look at the shot from above, it's not square, it's not completely perfect, and I think it was Holly said, "My OCD's killing me, why isn't it square?" Well, it's at the top of a hill, so I'm following the hill line all the way around, and the only part that's not a hill line is that part right there. We cut that off right there, and that is a straight line. You could see in the picture that it's a straight line. What we did is just follow the top of the hill, and you'll see poles are not exactly even. That's because of the rocks. So every time we came close to a rock, we'd have to shift or move. I wasn't gonna bring an excavator in and get those rocks out just to put these posts in. Now, what am I gonna plant in here? Let's go inside and talk about it. It's before dinner coffee. Okay, so let's talk about what I grew inside the fence this year. So I had 1/2 of it vegetables. I do have an asparagus bed that's establishing. So that is an area that is off limits. I do have a row of blueberries. I have a row of raspberries. And that's pretty much it for permanent plantings in there. I did try some grapes and they died. So I did not get a grape harvest off of my grapes. I put 6 plants in the ground, and I think 2 of them are still alive, but I'm not seeing any grapes from it. Along with the vegetables, I had all of the gladiola beds in there, which were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 rows, and then another bed of gladiolas in the back. I also had all of the lilies in there. Lilies are something that deer love. And so those were on the side behind the gladiolas, towards the road. They were all the way back and then kind of looped around to hug the gladiolas. I had, and not for deer resistant qualities, but I had my snapdragons in there. I had my lisianthus in there. I had my calendula in there. I had my dill. I had my amaranth. I had my celosia. I had my marigolds, and I didn't end up cutting off my marigolds. I could have, I just didn't. I loved them. They were so peaceful for me. I had my straw flowers inside the fence. I had the final batch of sunflowers that I put in the ground, I think there were 600 seeds. I put those inside the deer fence because I did not put the other sunflowers inside the deer fence, and they ended up getting munched on, like 200 of them. I lost 200. What else did I put inside the fence? And it wasn't, let's put it inside the fence to protect it from deer. I did that with the gladiolas and the lilies, but the other stuff that was where I had space. That's where I had rows ready to go, and I had plants ready to get in the ground. So this next year, I'm going to try to calculate it a little bit more in my my purposefulness in planting inside the deer fence. So I already planted 2,600 tulips in that spot. I have a few hundred more in my kitchen on the floor that need to go into the ground. And so now I have to figure out what else I'm going to put in there this year. We're using more of the space. So I originally had a little orchard in there. I had peach trees and pear trees. They were not established. They were second year plants. I ended up moving them because they just weren't doing anything. And so I put them outside the deer fence that kind of line the front of it. So if those ever grow to be beautiful trees, they'll be surrounding the outside of the fence facing the road. So that all of that area where the orchard was, and I had some rose bushes that not for my zone, they struggled. I had a few roses that were really struggling. So we took out those trees and we took out the rose bushes, and now we have a lot more area up in the front that was grass that we are going to use. Oh, I had my sweet peas inside the fence too. I had a whole entire row of sweet peas, and they were in with the vegetables. I don't know why I did that, but that's where I set it up. I was just kind of like set up and go, set up and go, set up and go, with no real plan as to where things were going to end up. I just wherever was open, I plopped them in. So tulips for sure are going to go in there. The lilies, I never dug them up, but I don't think I'm going to see anything from them. So I might end up having to dig them up, and I'm going to put more lilies in. Probably not as many this year. I'll probably do 400 lilies instead of the 700 that I did last year. Not because I don't think I can sell them. I'm just trying new things out. So I want to make sure I have the space for all the new things that I'm going to try. I ordered a few roses from the wholesale for the small scale grower, Jake's page. I ordered a few roses. I don't know if they're coming. Haven't heard anything on those roses yet. I know he was having some trouble with some of his supply. So if those roses come in, that's where they will go. And I ordered a beautiful pale lavender colored rose, and I'm wicked excited about that. So if they come, they come. And if they come, they're going in. Now there's a saying that basically deer will eat anything, and they will. I've had deer munch on my deer resistant plants. Which dahlias are supposedly deer resistant. I've had deer munch on them, but what usually happens is the deer will munch and decide, I don't really like that, and they'll move on. I've also had deer munch on peonies, and they're not supposed to be attracted to peonies, but I've also only had one peony have a chunk out of it, and the deer moved on, clearly said, not part of my diet, and went on his merry way, probably over to my hostas. No, so I also have zero issues with daffodils. Now, daffodils are actually toxic, so I don't know if the deer pick that up and they could smell like, I need to avoid these, or if they just don't like the smell, but they do not, or will not, or should not, or who knows. I feel like Dr. Seuss right now. I'll definitely be putting the phlox inside the deer fence this year. I ordered, I think 125 or 150 bare root phlox. And those are definitely something that I need to protect from the deer. So I'm probably gonna put those towards the front. By that, I have two 4x4 raised beds towards the front, and in those raised beds, I have perennial herbs, and I have my David Austin roses. So by there, I think I will probably put the phlox. Apparently, oh, did you guys see this? I'm crocheting this. Isn't it? It's gonna be lovely. So you put it on, not over a big fat hat, but it lays on you. Comfy cozy. Anyway, sidetracked, squirrel. I have to go make a meatloaf for the family. I'll be back, but it might be different. I might have to turn my light on because it might be dark out by the time I get back from putting the meatloaf in the oven. Be right back. It's dark out now. Not only did I go downstairs to make meatloaf, I kind of got a little sidetracked because I realized I haven't shown you guys the rest of my Johnny's order. I showed you guys the filler and stuff that I got, and I went over a couple of things over the summer, but I realized I had all of these things that I haven't even talked about yet. But let's finish talking about the deer fence. Okay, so when it comes to the actual fencing that you use, you don't have to use cattle panels. They make perfectly good plastic deer netting that you can use. Some people have perfectly good luck with them, and I actually did buy 100-foot stretch of deer netting, and I do plan on using that somewhere in the field this next year, probably around some sunflowers. So let's talk about what I'm actually going to be planting. Additional things I already talked about a little bit. So with the tulips and the gladiolas and the lilies and the roses, those are the obvious things. Those are the things that deer are known to love. And I'll be honest, I was a little surprised with the number of things that deer are not going to eat. And I can't say they're never going to eat something, because deer are more like browsers. They'll browse the area and take a nibble here and take a nibble there. They're not like a cow, where a cow just goes in and grazes the entire thing. So a deer is kind of choosy. They'll taste something, see if they like it. Talked about that already. So the other things that I know the deer in my area like are cosmos, because they ate all the cosmos in my wildflower field. In fact, I took a photo of them in July of this year. They didn't even care that I was right there. I drove up to them on a four-wheeler. I'm yelling, I'm like, get out of my field! And they're just staring at me like, excuse me, dinner time, excuse me. It was an evening in July, and they were munching. What are you gonna do? This is where I live. I live in nature. They're all over the place. So what I'm gonna do is put up a deer fence. So I invested in the deer fence, and I think the total investment was about $1,500 for that deer fence, which is, you know, when it comes to a giant fence like that, the year before, I had a chicken wire 3-foot tall fence around, thinking, oh, that'll keep them out. Nah, no. That's funny. It's actually quite comical. The deer ate my entire lot of pumpkins last year, the entire lot of squash, the entire lot of green beans, and the entire lot of my sugar snap peas. And if you know me, sugar snap peas are my jam. They're like my favorite thing. I will be out there in March in the frozen ground putting in my sugar snap peas, because they're the sign of summer for me. I absolutely adore them. I will eat all of them out of the garden. None of them will make it into the house. So they ate all my peas, and when they ate all my peas, they messed up, because I meant business after that. So we put up the deer fence. In addition to those flowers that I've already talked about, the cosmos are going to go in there for sure. And there are a few other things that I think we need to put in there. I bought 3 different kinds of flowering kale, flowering cabbage. I want those to go in there because not only do I have deer in the area and deer will eat cabbage, I also have groundhogs, and they will get in and eat my cabbage. In fact, I actually left the gate open to the garden a couple of nights, and they got in there and they did eat the cabbage that I have growing in my, and the kale too. Which was a bummer because my kale was so beautiful this year. Anyway, and then I'll just kind of play it by ear. What I've been doing is like picking up a seed packet. This is digitalis, which is foxglove, and I'll Google, is foxglove deer resistant? Yes, foxglove is deer resistant because it's toxic. So I don't know if they know that by smelling it, that they sense the toxicity in it, or if their mommy deer, learned them right. So they know that it's bad for them. We have a lot of things that you can put out in the landscape and the deer are not gonna bother, and if they do, they'll bother 1 or 2 plants and then move along. I'm not a professional fence builder. I know it doesn't look perfect. I know we still have to, we did buy 2x4s to connect the tops all the way around. We will do that this spring. We just didn't get to it this year. But we do have a stack of 2x4s to go around the top to kind of secure it all together. But we were talking about doing it this fall and we said, let's see what it does. Let's let it go through a winter and see how much shifting happens, and then we'll put the 2x4s on in the spring. So we'll see how it works. Fingers crossed. We definitely do plan on putting some other addition to give it a little bit more height. And I was thinking, you know how like a baseball backstop, it goes up a certain amount and then it faces out like this? I was thinking of having something going out, like even a couple of poles with a wire all the way around. I don't know. I have all these ideas, and then Brad Pitt looks at me like, what? What do you want me to do? And then I call my dad. No, Brad's really good about it. Well, folks, I appreciate you hanging out with me. Thanks so much for joining me on this adventure. We'll see you next time.